In this video, we're going to have a look at how leaves absorb sunlight. You need to have your photosynthesis booklet open at page 5. So we've had a look so far at how a plant obtains water for photosynthesis, and it does that from the soil through its roots. And in particular, it uses its specialised cells of root hair cells to absorb the water. They have a large surface area and have a very thin wall to help water absorption. And we've also had a look at how plants take in carbon dioxide, and they take that in from the air, and they take it in through their leaves, and in particular through those little stomata, the pores in the surface of the leaf, in particular the lower surface. So today we're going to have a look at the final thing that a plant needs for photosynthesis, and that is sunlight. It doesn't use up sunlight in the same way that it uses up water and carbon dioxide and changes it into something else, but it still needs sunlight to give it energy for photosynthesis to take place. So we're going to have a look at that on page 5 of our booklet. So page 5 summarises how a plant takes in light. Light energy is absorbed from the sun or from an artificial lighting by the pigment called chlorophyll. Be careful about your spelling of that. Maybe practice spelling that just above the word. So it's CHLOROPHYLL. So that's the green pigment, and that is a chemical that makes leaves green. And that chemical, that pigment, is contained in small green structures called chloroplasts. And they are found in the cytoplasm of the cell. Now, we spent a bit of time last week in your Microsoft Forms quiz looking at the different parts of the cell. And this is another plug. If you haven't got that done, please try and get that done today. And we had a look at the different parts of the cell from last year. But let me take you through that. And what I'd like you to do is label it, being really, really careful about your spelling, but also want you to recap on the functions of these parts. So let's start in the bottom left-hand corner with this black circle that's labelled. That is what we call the nucleus. The nucleus is spelled NUCLEUS. So be careful about that. That's quite often spelt wrong, but try and get your spelling as accurately as possible. The nucleus essentially controls the cell's activities and contains the genetic information. So you might want to write that underneath nucleus. Make nucleus stand out, maybe highlight it or write it in a different colour, and then write your function underneath it. The nucleus controls the cell's activities and contains the genetic information. I'll just put a wee apostrophe there before the S of cells. Okay, moving our way up, we have got another structure labelled, and this is something that is unique to plant cells. Animal cells do not have this, and that is the cell wall. Hopefully that should be a bit easier to spell, CELL, and then wall, WALL. And that is made out of a substance called cellulose, and it gives the cell a rigid shape, and it supports the cell. So that is the cell wall. Supports the cell and gives it a rigid shape. Next structure up is what we're focusing on today, these little things called chloroplasts, and they are what trap the sunlight for photosynthesis. So if you label them, the spelling of chloroplasts is CHLOROPLASTS, and they trap sunlight for photosynthesis. What you might also want to do at this point is to colour in your chloroplasts, because remember they are green in colour because of that pigment chlorophyll. So what I would do is get a colouring pencil and go round and colour each of those chloroplasts green. If you don't have one handy, maybe pause the video now, go and get a green colouring pencil or felt tip pen and colour those in. So a leaf cell will be packed full of chloroplasts. We sometimes call leaf cells palisade cells. Those are specialised cells that are specialised for trapping sunlight, and that's because they are packed full of chloroplasts, so they can absorb as much sunlight as possible. So you tend to see those types of cells on the top surface of a leaf, the surface of the leaf that's going to absorb the most sunlight because it's the most exposed to sunlight. So on the top surface of the leaf, you'll have these palisade or leaf cells that will be packed full of chloroplasts to trap as much sunlight for photosynthesis. Okay, next structure up that we're going to look at, it's actually running along the inside of the cell wall, so it's important that you label it in the correct place, and it's essentially surrounding the contents of the cell, and it runs along the outside of the cytoplasm, which we'll come to in a second. This is what we call the cell membrane. And its job is to control what enters and leaves the cell. It also contains the cell contents. So that cell membrane is on the inside of the cell wall, and it contains the cell contents. Moving on round to the right hand side then, we have got our cytoplasm, and that is spelled C-Y-T-O-P-L-A-S-M. So take that spelling down carefully. And the cytoplasm is like a solution, a liquidy solution, where the chemical reactions of the cell take place. So reactions like respiration. And then finally, we have our vacuole. And again, only plant cells have these. And vacuoles are filled with something called cell sap, and they act as a food store for the plant cells. So you can write that function in as well. So that is your plant cell, your typical plant cell, and it's really the cells that we find in leaves, because if you remember last week we looked at root hair cells, which look a little bit different. They have that long projection with a large surface area, and they don't have chloroplasts because they're below the ground, and so they don't need chloroplasts because they won't be trapping any sunlight. But this is your typical leaf or palisade cell, packed full of chloroplasts to maximise the absorption of sunlight. So it's these chloroplasts, if you wanted to put a star beside them, that we're focusing on. They are what traps the sunlight, and because they contain a pigment called chlorophyll, which is able to absorb the sunlight. And we as animals don't have chloroplasts either, and that's why we're not green, and that's why we can't make our own food by photosynthesis. If we had chloroplasts that contain chlorophyll, then we could, but unfortunately we don't. So that's unique to plants. So make sure those are labelled well, and you have checked your spelling. Maybe pause the video and double check the spelling of each of your labels. And then I'm going to take you through what you need to do for the rest of the lesson. So sticking with the theme of the effect of light on photosynthesis and how a plant needs light for photosynthesis, I've got a worksheet for you to finish for the rest of today's lesson. So it is a worksheet that describes an experiment. What you need to do is make sure you read this section really carefully, so that you understand the context of the experiment. And then you just have 5 simple questions to answer. Now, how I want you to do this, I've set this up as an assignment on Teams. This is a bit like how you did your sound test a couple of weeks ago. So I have attached the worksheet to the assignment, and you should be able to open it and edit your own copy of the worksheet. So a bit like what we did for our test. Open the worksheet on the assignment on Teams, save a copy to your OneDrive. Type your answers below the questions, and that's in full sentences as it says on this slide. Save it again, make sure you hit save at the end, and then hand in the assignment. So just click hand in. The changes you make should update to the assignment, but that's why I want you to save it to the your OneDrive, just in case the changes don't save to the assignment. What you then want to do is have it saved in the OneDrive so you can then attach it to the assignment if all else fails. Now, if you prefer to print the worksheet, it's also in files on Teams, or you can access it through the assignment. You can print it off and write out your answers, and maybe on the back of the worksheet. But I still want you to submit it as a Word document to the assignment on Teams, because I would like to mark this work to monitor your progress through our remote learning. So please do read the worksheet carefully and answer the questions as fully as possible. And if you're having any trouble with accessing that worksheet or don't know how to open it in Word and things like that, just let me know. Just type a comment on Teams or email me and just tag me in that so that I get that. So really what I want is your completed work to be attached to the assignment on Teams, but if you open it up through the assignment, it should save automatically, but make sure you save your document to the OneDrive just in case. So give it your best go. If you're not sure about all of the questions, don't worry too much, just do your best. And once you finish that, that's your work completed for today. Please make sure you have uploaded it to the assignment by the end of today's lesson so that I can then get that marked. Thank you.